Ladies and gentlemen, it's Thursday the 1st of September 2016, and this is mostly going to be about PHP. Sorry I missed the stream last night, but today, with any luck you can hear me, today we are going to look at a very interesting topic. So, to get started, this is the screen I am going to be on for like the whole time, unless I need to look something up in a browser. Oh, let's just get some more. Yeah, there we go. So, I have an iPad, and it is one of the few pleasures I think of doing a lot of traveling, is to be able to have something light and that will charge on an aeroplane, like the iPad. But I always have issues when I am traveling, because I tend to live in places that take a lot of travel to get to Europe or the States, that I want to do work, or I want to code, or I want to experiment, and I can't really do that nicely on the MacBook Pro. I've got a mid 2014 MacBook Pro, so it's a great machine to work on, but it's kind of heavy, and it's 2.5 times the size of an iPad Air, and it doesn't charge on an airplane. Mic not working. That's odd. Can anyone else hear me? Genetics O. Right. There appears to be a little bit of delay. I apologize for that, because I'm like mid-conversation and folks are still in the intro screen, so sorry about that. A bit of delay. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I'd really like if I could code or hack on an iPad mid-flight. And that's the thing. Like, that's what I'm going to do tonight, or try and do tonight. I've been putting off experimenting for this for a while, but then yesterday I did some research, and turns out there are actually some awesome things that you can try. So, I've gone and downloaded a couple apps, and they are this one here, Draft Code, which I saw a link to on Reddit a few days ago. Yay! Wayne can hear me. So, Draft Code I saw a link to on Reddit a few days ago, and turns out it's pretty cool, and we'll have a look at it in quite a lot of detail. And then when the conversation came up, Davy Shafiq mentioned that he'd been speaking to someone else, I forget who, about using GitHub on an iPad or an Apple device. And turns out both Draft Code and Working Copy, these two apps here, are available for both iPad and iPhone, which is cool, because even if you don't do what I'm going to try and do tonight, which is to make a decent workflow and development environment on the iPad, you can still use these things for emergency PHP edits, and I'll walk you through what I've discovered about the apps. I'm not a pro with these apps. I have never done serious development on an iPad before, so this is pretty new to me. I also forgot to start a timer, so this is going to be a very long first segment, which is fine. Okay. So, I want to start off talking about Working Copy, which is this GitHub interface. By the way, when I look down, it's because that's where the actual iPad is. Like, here is the iPad. Anyway, it's got a pretty clean interface like this. It starts you off with a documentation repo, which I'm just going to delete straight away because I've been through the basics of this documentation repo. Wow, my clicking is off here. That's pretty weird. Okay, so it's got a documentation repo that it starts you off with, but what you probably want to do is... I was clicking on the screen. Can you believe it? Hold on. This is confusing. Okay, what you probably want to do is go to the cog, top left over here, and tap that, and then go to identities and set up a GitHub identity. So do the plus button, and then you put these things in. Let's see if I can do this without revealing any incriminating details. Is this going to constantly be... I'll show you the kit that I'm working with in a second. It's hilarious how this is like capitalizing stuff I don't want capitalized. But anyway, assertchris, and my email address, which is no secret to the whole wide world, cgpit@gmail.com. It finds that. I'll just make this default. Woohoo! There we go. Okay. What you want to do is set up the identity, pretty much the same one that you use for Git on your development machine, because I presume you're using Git or GitHub on a development machine. And so just to show you how you find this out, if you configured it long ago and you can't remember what it is, let's see, git config. Let's see. There we go. Okay, git config user.email and user.name, I think, is the other one. There we go. So these are the details I just put in through the app. And yeah, I'd recommend doing that, because otherwise when you commit from your dev machine and then you do later commits from the iPad, they're going to have different users and or email addresses unless you make those exactly the same. And as we'll see, this app also sets up SSH keys. So later on, let me see if you do it through here. I think you do it when you add your first repo. So I'm going to do the plus again, or that plus, clone. And then you see sort of midway down here, there's a sign in, sign up for GitHub. This, as you can see, also works with Bitbucket and other Git-based things, but I'm going to do sign in to GitHub. And with any luck, it's not going to ask me for username and password. If it does, I'll just take AirPlay off for a second. Yes, okay. Woohoo! Let's put that off quickly. So it's like this, and then some passwordy thing. Hopefully you all didn't see that. OPSEC! Wrong username and password! There we go. Okay. Now because I have two-factor auth set up on GitHub, I actually need to go to the Authy app to put this code in that it's going to ask for now. Let me do it before the time runs out. Speed mode. Verify. Being silly? What do you mean? So Angerblade, you see I don't know how easy it is going to be for me to point to this because I don't see it on my screen, but you see these overlays up here? I've programmed these overlays just using JavaScript and HTML, and they are being served with a globally installed node serve command. So it's not actually serving any, it's not actually doing any node dev. There is JavaScript there, but it is using the node server to serve that stuff. It's the same as if you do the HTTP server on Python or whatever. Okay, let me load this back up. Woohoo! Okay, so here you can see it's sent an SSH key to GitHub. I don't want to configure that because I am quite happy with the key that it's sent. I don't even want to open email to check that out. But now that I've signed in with GitHub, it's showing all the repos that I can do stuff on now. So I'll just pull one down like functional. Woohoo! Clone. And what that'll do is it'll go to GitHub and it'll clone the thing to... Yay! It'll clone the... it'll clone the code via the SSH key or using the SSH key that it has sent to GitHub. Yes. And so this is code that I've actually got on GitHub, which is pretty awesome. GitHub, assertchris, functional, which is a fun little project I worked on a while ago. But it's basically the same thing that I've now got running in a sandbox environment on the iPad. Okay? This little app is interesting because it lets you do emergency changes to stuff. Like if you presumably use Bitbucket or GitHub, and if you have something's gone wrong and you have a continuous integration thing, or you need to make a change for a coworker to like tell them what's going on or something like that, then this is a really cool app. You can do all sorts of things like, okay, there's just a brief commit history going on here, but adding new remotes and changing the branch that you're looking at, it's all pretty easy to use. And the way that you get changes in this, because if it was just syncing, it would be kind of dumb, but the way that you get changes in this is to go to a file, and then you can use the share button. Oh, you can't even see, oh my gosh. High quality streaming entertainment. Okay, let me go back to where I was. Okay, so click on an app. This is the functionality I was talking about, though being too dumb to actually show it on the right screen. But there's a list of commits down at the bottom there. You can do things like add remotes, remove this repo from the device. The way that you actually make changes to files in here is to go to a file and to go to the share card, and then to pick something like edit or save to cloud to open with another app. Yeah, easy mistake to make, Gigabit Gamer. I was from SA, and I'm working now in New Zealand. So yeah, the share card lets you do things like airdrop if you want to edit it on another device. Edit, copy this file. Open in is another option. So if you have the Coda iPad app, I forget who the producer of that is for the moment, but anyway, if you have the Coda IDE app, I believe that you can do something like open in and the Coda app and edit it in there. But I digress. This is how you take a file from this working copy GitHub app or Git app and edit it somewhere else. Okay. That's about all I want to talk about with this GitHub app. This I keep on calling it a GitHub app, but it's not. It's a Git app. The reason that that's all we're going to look at the app for, let me learn to English properly. The reason I'm going to spend so little time on this app is because it's not actually, it doesn't work well with DraftCode, which is the app I'm going to be spending a lot of time on. DraftCode doesn't integrate into the open with share card stuff, which means that it's tricky to get a file from working copy into DraftCode. It's easier to get a copy from DraftCode into working copy, but there are limitations to that, which I will show you. Also, while we're at it, I'm going to disable AirPlay here because I want to show you what kit I'm using for this. So let me disable that. Let me go back to the screen here. Yesterday, I went and I got one of these, which I haven't had in a long time. I had one for the old iPad, a big iPad, which had like the 12-pin connector. This is a Lightning connector to a USB. It's a camera kit, basically. That's what it's called. So you can plug a single USB device, low-power USB device in here. I've tried two devices in here. One is one I'll show you now, but the other I tried a flash drive and it didn't, a flash stick, and it didn't work. So it's a bit picky about which devices it does use. But I've done crazy things with this before. The one that I had for the 12-pin connector, I could actually plug a little keyboard into, like a musical keyboard into it. So it's picky about what devices it wants, but the device that I got it for was that I wanted to get a proper keyboard. Not like an on-screen keyboard. It's upside down. That way. Not an on-screen keyboard, but a smallish, decent keyboard. It's not a mechanical keyboard. It's not a full-size keyboard. But what I found with it is that it is actually very quiet. Let me plug all the stuff back in. I must tell you a funny thing as well. Look at the markings on the end there. You see it's just a slot. There's no sort of, there's a thing that says it's a camera slot. There's a thing that says like it's a lightning thingy. But there's no up or down. Do you know how long it took me to decide which way to put the lightning port in? I'm not even going to tell you how long it took me to figure that out. Anyway, If you're not sure, I'll let you figure it out on your own, because you'll feel a lot smarter after you do that, or dumber just after you do it, as I felt. Okay. This keyboard, I want to show you how this does quickly. So I'll put AirPlay back in. Engage. Okay. I have engaged AirPlay. Let me go to a text editor like iWriter, because it's amazing. I love this app. It's going to do it. Okay, fine. So I didn't want that. Go away. Go away. Go away. Okay. This is an amazing writing app, right? It's got an on-screen keyboard, obviously, like all this iPad stuff does. But this other keyboard that I got is a Microsoft all-in-one media keyboard, which was... the camera kit cost about 75 New Zealand dollars. So like 100 Rand if you're from South Africa, and I know a few people here have had experience with South Africa. And the keyboard cost about $70. So altogether it's about 200 Rand or 150 New Zealand dollars, which is still $50 cheaper than an Apple Magic keyboard. Now the Apple Magic keyboard is Bluetooth compatible, so I wouldn't actually need the camera kit, right? I could just pair an iPad with this. If you have an iPad Pro, any kind of iPad Pro, they actually have a special new port called I don't even know what it's called, a Magic Connector or something. It's basically 3 dots on the side of the iPad, and the covers that they sell for iPad Pros that have built-in keyboards connect through that. So you can't, if you have an older iPad like me, you can't actually get one of the official Apple cover keyboards, which I spent a lot of time learning the hard way. You're basically down to a cheap Bluetooth keyboard that you can get off eBay for like... Liz got one for like $20 or something. It's really, really cheap. But if you don't want a Bluetooth keyboard, if you'd prefer something that's a little bit more well constructed and sounds a little bit better, this is how this sounds. I'm right by the mic here, right? It's really quiet compared to... Okay, well, you hear the system sounds, but you know, it's actually a nice keyboard. It's got a trackpad over here, which is... It doesn't work with iPad, which is hilarious. The iPad recognizes the keyboard side of things, and the keys are pretty compatible with it. Let me actually see if the media keys sound button affects this. Yeah. So I'm pushing the sound stuff and it's adjusting that. So I mean, it's fairly well integrated on the keyboard side of things, but the mouse side of things, not so much. iPad's just not made to use a mouse, I'm guessing, which makes sense. I'm not that upset though, because this doubles quite well for if I want to do something like a Raspberry Pi machine. It's a single port because it's just one Wi-Fi, one Wi-Fi receiver. So it's a single USB port that it takes to have a keyboard and a mouse, and it actually feels quite sturdy. It takes 2 AAA batteries. There's a slot in the back here for the receiver when it's not plugged into something. That's pretty good. I like it. Anyway, that's the kit I'm working with. My options were buy a cheap Bluetooth keyboard, which I didn't want to do because they're tiny and they feel gross, and their keys are all smushed together and it's like non-standard layouts, and you pay for it from eBay, which is, you know, it's a gamble that you're going to get it most times if you've got my mindset. But you can get a Bluetooth keyboard, you can get a Magic Keyboard from Apple, which if you have the money to spend on Apple branded keyboard for an Apple branded iPad, that's cool, because that's probably, the way I feel about it, probably going to be the best construction and the best device pairing. But as a cheap alternative, $50 cheaper than the Apple Magic Keyboard, this is pretty good. It feels nice, it sounds nice, and it works with the camera kit, which plugs into the iPad. So I've got an actual keyboard. I can type on an actual keyboard to do this code. I'm not going to be typing on the screen, which is awesome. That was a really big sidetrack, by the way. But if you were interested in the hardware, as sometimes I find myself being more interested than the actual subject matter, perhaps it was interesting to you. Okay. I'll talk about the mirroring software at some other point. I don't really feel like talking about it now. If you're curious, you can, I don't know, tweet me at assertchris on Twitter and I'll answer questions there. But I don't want to talk too much about that now because it's like a whole other sidetrack. Okay, we've looked at working copy. I've shown you a bit about the kit that I want to use. The app that I'm going to spend most of this time in is called Draft Code. So, looks like that. Now, I need to point out at this point that the amount of money that I've spent on this setup, I got the iPad as like a year and a half ago as a separate thing, right? It was never meant to be for code. What I've spent in the last 2 days has been on the camera kit, the keyboard, and this Draft Code app. The Draft Code app costs about $11 US on iStore. If you don't have a way to buy software for the iPad from the iStore, there are ways around this. Again, I'll talk on Twitter about that if you're interested, at assertchris on Twitter. But that's it, all in all. I mean, I've been able to get a decent coding setup, to my mind, for the equivalent of about 250 Rand, the equivalent of about $200 less than that, right? It's not an expensive setup. It actually costs the same as the first Raspberry Pi I ever bought, except that doesn't have a screen, a keyboard and mouse, an enclosure, a battery life, and the ability to do things other than flail hopelessly with limited RAM and processing speed. So this is a good deal for me, I feel. But you need to know, if you want to get Draft Code, it's going to be $11 US. So you need to be able to sort that out. Working copy is free. The version that I've got, you can get an enterprise version, which is only, I read the description of both of them, and the difference between the enterprise and the normal version of working copy is that the enterprise one is more geared towards sharing across teams. So you can do things like, if someone pushes a commit to a repo that you've got cloned, you can use webhooks to have it automatically sync down to your iPad or your iPhone. But if you're just coding on this on your own and you want a free app to do it on, and you want to use working copy, you can get the free one. And if you want that functionality later on, you can do in-app purchases to get it, or you can just buy the enterprise version. So I think it costs the same. Code. Code. Okay. When you boot this, sorry, I need to remove this. Because here's the thing. Okay. Here's the thing I discovered while I was setting up for stream, and it's really good to know about. If you have the receiver for an external keyboard plugged into the camera kit, and you open up Draft Code, it should do this again. Okay, you open up Draft Code, you see there's a whole lot of grayed out area there. It's a bug in Draft Code, which I'm going to submit to them when I get a chance, but I only discovered or figured this out now. It's a bug in Draft Code where this bar at the bottom is actually trying to be positioned up here with the space of the keyboard underneath it, but it doesn't want to show the keyboard because you've got an external keyboard plugged in. So I figured, from trial and error, I figured this out. You basically have to, when you boot this app, just unplug the receiver, drop the keyboard with pushing this keyboard down button, bottom right, and then plug the receiver back in. And then the next time you highlight that, this bar is positioned correctly over here. I'm going to talk to them about that. Maybe they'll want to fix that, especially after someone's done like extensive review of this process. Anyway, when you boot this app, this is what you get. You get welcome.php and you get welcome.png. And if you look up here, there's actually a run button. So I can press that, and what I'm going to see is that welcome.php through a web server. It's running at 127.0.0.1. I believe that this is spinning up a PHP web server at port 80 on the iPad. I don't know what all that means, But I do know that there's this really helpful PHP info link over here, and you can create your own PHP scripts that call PHP info to show you all this information. Yay, look at all my sensitive device information. Okay. Server API, draft code embed PHP. This looks like a version of PHP, PHP 5.6.17 to be precise, compiled to run on iPad. Because all these settings look normal. URL include is off, URL if open is on. This server works with get and post, and if you use method spoofing like you do for the rest of the internet, when you're making applications that use other methods like patch and put and delete, then you can spoof these methods because it supports get and post, which is pretty cool. It comes with a lot of modules already installed. I'm not going to go through the details of the specific server, but if you set this up, go to PHP info and just study it for a while, because that's what I did earlier. And it seems the settings on iPad are the same as the settings on iPhone, because I only had my iPhone at the time and I tried it on there. Anyway, it seems to have a lot of normal modules installed. There's date, there's DOM, EXIF, the filter functions, JSON handler, XML. It's got a MySQL extension installed. I do not think, but I haven't verified this, I do not think it spins up a MySQL server. I think this is just for this PHP code connecting to an external server. But once we get past all these MySQL extensions, wow, it installs PDO. It installs PDO MySQL and SQLite. And it has the plain old SQLite 3 extension. So, although I need to test this, I am fairly confident that you can spin up a SQLite database on this device, which means you don't need necessarily to connect to an external database. You should be able to run the usual stuff just from the iPad without an internet connection, without syncing to GitHub. To further cement this thought, if I hit stop up here and I go to the settings, bottom left, is that cog? I can automatically install WordPress and PHP Lite Admin, which is a SQLite admin as far as I'm aware. I can automatically install these. So it's got to be able to run SQLite here. And I'm confident, with a bit of experimentation, that it's going to be possible to install Laravel and Silverstripe to this, which is the end goal, right? But there are some hurdles first. To begin with, I have this welcome.php page. What if I want to send it somewhere? How do I do that? Well, there's a share dialog. Oh no, tell me it's not going to do this every time I switch. That's lame. There's a share dialog top right, which I can use. And here I can copy it to a few apps. I think more. Well, I mean, this is kind of limiting if you think about it. I think I need to enable working copy and then I can send it directly there. So save to working copy. And then it's going to let me pick where it saves it to. So getting the file from draft code into working copy seems a lot easier, but there is a caveat here. I have to initiate this push from draft code. It's not going to happen automatically. And it's not possible, I tested this earlier on an iPhone because I was really curious about this whole thing. It's not possible to sync an entire folder. You can't go and make a bunch of migrations and a bunch of seeders and a bunch of model factories in a Laravel application and then sync the whole database folder. You're going to have to go through each file and sync them if you use working code to do that. So, my goal, apart from this glorious introduction that I've already done, is to try and create a way to sync code sensibly. Maybe not get to the syncing part now, but to create a set of scripts, a workflow, so that I can say all the code, all the files in my workspace, because I only appear to have one workspace, all the code in this workspace. Oh, that makes me sad. Silversphere says it's lagging a bit. Sorry, mate. my goal is to get all the code except for a special folder of maintenance scripts, in which the script that does this will be, to gzip, and then to be entered into a JSON file, the gzip version of the code with a text string that describes what I've done to it. That's my goal. Because I want to be able to send that gzip using curl to another server when I get to an internet connection, and then unzip it there, apply it to an existing GitHub repo, and make a commit all automatically. That's what I want to do. But I'm not going to get through all of that, obviously, now, because there's only about half an hour left of the stream. What I'm going to start with is learning a bit about the zip extension in PHP, trying to compile a semi-complex folder structure full of configuration files and PHP files into a zip and enter it into that data file. That's what I want to do. Before that happens, I'm going to take a break. And what I'm actually going to do is restart the stream, maybe at a lower bitrate, because maybe that's what the problem is. So don't go away. The stream is going to die, but just refresh it after that happens. Yeah. I'm going to try to do that. Anyway, I'll see you in a little bit. Listen to some music, maybe 5 minutes or so.